From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I am Stefania Bravo. This is From the South. The parents of the Swedish computer programmer Olavini have spoken to Telesur 2 weeks after his son was arrested for alleged links to Julian Assange. They say they are worried about his son's well-being inside the prison and expect a fair trial.
The condition in the prison is not so good. All the prisoners are laying on the floor. 95 people share 17 mattresses. They had to see daylight 3 days a week, and they have water for 5 hours a day maybe, and it's cold water, and they cannot drink it. So there's a lot of things that's not so good for them, for all the prisoners.
What we expect and what we want is that he gets a fair trial, that all the things that went wrong under the arrest is taken under consideration, and also the evidence that he had a book of Noam Chomsky, a couple of USB sticks and a couple of computers. That is the evidence they have showed, and I don't think it's a crime to have any of those things.
Benny's father also said he cannot understand why his son was arrested. The parents also sent a message to the Ecuadorian government.
We don't know that, but the only explanation I can give in my own thoughts is his friendship with Assange. That's the only thing, but nothing else. Please, the Ecuadorian government, next time you meet Ola, give him a fair trial. It's not about guilt or not guilt. It is about human rights to be treated fair so the legal system is working. Thank you.
A vigil has been held outside the UK Parliament Square in support of Wikileaks founder Julian Assange. Demonstrators expressed concerns over the conditions under which Assange currently arrested in the Belmarsh prison. The detention center is known for being used for those convicted of terror-related offenses. Protesters say the UK government is colluding with Ecuador and the US in a process which they say will lead to extradition.
And what is shameful is that the British government is colluding with Donald Trump to enable this man who told the truth to be taken to the United States, put on trial under charges drawn up by a secret grand jury, and will face many, many years in prison for simply telling the American public what they always had the right to know. He has performed a huge public service in shining a light on the United States war crimes, human rights abuses, cover-ups, and diplomatic duplicity.
I'm here because I'm very concerned about freedom of expression. I'm concerned because if Julian Assange is convicted, then all people who want to continue the noble profession of journalism are being pressured into falling short of revealing the truth with the right at stake. As an Ecuadorian, I'm also here to show the world that we Ecuadorians never wanted the deal that Lenin Moreno made with the UK and especially with the United States.
Our correspondent Pablo Navarrete was at the demonstration in London and sent us this report.
Nearly 2 weeks after the Australian publisher Julian Assange was arrested, taken out the Ecuadorian embassy by British police, around 60 people have gathered outside the British Parliament to call for his release and to call on the British government to respect international law. Now, there have been speeches made by numerous people, and there is a large contingent of Latin Americans who have come to express their anger at the conditions in which Julian Assange is being kept. He's being kept in Belmarsh high security prison, which is where the British government normally keeps those considered terrorists. So as we know, nearly 2 weeks ago the British government entered the Ecuadorian embassy after Lenin Moreno, the Ecuadorian president, says he stripped Julian Assange of his asylum. So here the people are shouting hands off Assange and continuing to demand from the British government that they release Julian Assange journalists who they say being persecuted for exposing US war crimes and criticising the British government for its complicity in the US's attempts to extradite him to the US.
We thank Pablo for that report. Indigenous communities are protesting in the Brazilian capital against the president's policies. Indigenous people set up camp in the area where the main ministries are located. They are demanding respect for their rights and for their territories. The government orders security forces to reinforce security in the area, despite the fact communities are demonstrating peacefully.
We are not going to accept this because the government is practically injuring the Brazilian Constitution, which gives guarantees to indigenous people and for the demarcation of indigenous lands.
We are here for our rights, to defend, to speak, to complain. So that's the problems with us. With the indigenous population, don't go on.
Our correspondent in Brazil, Danai Galetti, brings us more.
Sí, gracias. Un placer saludarte a ti y a quienes reciben la señal de Telesur. We're here at the headquarters of Brazil's government, where indigenous people have set up camp. More than 5,000 indigenous leaders are expected to join the protest in representation of over 800,000 indigenous people. Last week, Minister of Justice Sérgio Moro authorized security forces to act where indigenous people have already planned to demonstrate from the 24th to the 26th of April. Indigenous communities say that their demonstration is peaceful and that they set up the camp to defend the rights of their communities, especially to defend their rights, which are in danger since Jair Bolsonaro took office and began to attack the rights of the indigenous people. Rights that are protected by the Constitution, including the right to own lands.
We thank Danai for that report. The protests have been fueled by the increasing conflicts over the Amazon land, which is at risk due to land invaders. Communities and activists report that threats and invasions to their territories by several groups rose in the last months. They also say that these illegal groups have taken the lead due to Bolsonaro's policies against the environment. They demand urgent solutions.
We want the government to do something urgently because there will be trouble for the illegal farmers. Is that what you want?
I am a chief. I will die if you kill my land, but I will fight for my people.
Protesters are demanding justice for 14 people fatally shot during a family celebration in Mexico. The victims' relatives and social organizations have taken to the streets in a march for peace. They're calling on the authorities to conduct a speedy investigation. A baby boy was among the 14 killed on April 19th when gunmen stormed an event hall and opened fire. More Central American migrant caravans have been arriving in Mexico. According to official figures in the border state of Chiapas, there are thousands of people waiting to regularize their immigration situation before heading north towards the U.S.
At just 17, Jorge decided to leave his home country of Honduras in January. He was fleeing the poverty and violence of Central America. With few belongings, like most others in his situation, he joined one of the many caravans being organized to cross Mexico.
There were many people, and so it was not easy. We could have been robbed or kidnapped. It was not going to be easy, but I felt more secure in the caravan.
This unusual flow of migrants increased sharply in the last quarter of 2018. The number of women, adolescents, and children increased the most. A third of those on the caravans are minors. Officials of the National Institute of Migration carry out checks. On Monday, on the road from Mapastepec to Pijijiapan, some of them were attacked by a group of migrants who, according to the official version, refused to go to a registration post. The ministers of the Interior and Foreign Relations explained the situation in the southern state of Chiapas, where more than 5,800 people are waiting for a permit that allows them to cross Mexican territory and reach the border with the United States.
As we have said before, the migratory policy of the government of Mexico has three fundamental axes: the protection of human rights, the economic and social development of the countries of the Central American region, and the orderly registration of migrants who enter our territory.
However, the arrival of so many foreigners has overwhelmed many of the Mexican institutions and is stretching the resources of the towns and communities along the route of the caravans.
We must support not only migrants in Tapachula, but also the population there, so they can be hospitable with migrants.
During the month of April, nearly 12,000 people have been sent back to their countries of origin. There's also been an unusual number of citizens from different countries of Africa and Asia. In Tapachula, there are at least 1,300 people waiting for their migratory situation to be resolved.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome back. Over 100 friends and family members have gathered to hold a mass funeral for victims of a landslide in Colombia. 24 victims of the landslide in the town of Rosas were buried. Following days of heavy rains, the landslide swept away 8 houses and killed at least 33 people last Sunday. Authorities continue to search through rubble. Uruguay is ready to export the first shipment of medical marijuana to foreign countries. A Uruguayan marijuana factory is preparing to ship 6 tons of the plant. The shipment is heading to medical markets in a number of European countries and Canada and also Australia. Uruguay was the first country in the world to regulate the medical marijuana sales through pharmacies in 2013.
What we've done here in our first year of production is very effectively standardized our cannabis cultivation, which is very important when you're supplying medical markets in particular. Our goal is to go from about 6 tons of production to 10 tons to about 30 tons and grow from there.
A Chilean court has forbidden filmmaker Nicolás López from leaving the country while he's being investigated for sexual abuse. After a hearing on Wednesday, the court imposed precautionary measures to the director, who is accused of 5 different sexual abuse cases, including one in which the victim was a minor. 745 Chilean students were expelled from school in 2018 under the Safe Classroom Law, one of the main initiatives of President Sebastián Piñera. But according to experts and students, the project is criminalizing the student movement and violating their rights.
A few days ago, 8 students from the Dario Salas school were taken from their homes and forced to spend the night in a police station.
Many people remember these things happening during the dictatorship. I think the violence has reached a high point in a symptomatic way, with all the demands we've established.
According to President Sebastián Piñera, the Safe Classroom Law is supposed to reduce violence inside the schools. However, the reality is that the law is trying to put out the fire with gasoline. Why has this happened? The law has given more power to the school principals to lead raids, to expel students, and to take so-called precautionary measures to repress the students who fight for better public education and reject a system where education is seen as a commodity.
I studied in the Javier Carrera 1 school where I was attacked. I had to change schools because of that. But today I want to stand with my former classmates who are being expelled from their schools. They're not receiving the right to an education just because the principal wants to expel any student who is protesting to gain rights for everyone.
Students are being arrested, handcuffed, controlled and attacked.
We are seeing that there is not an education system, but a judicial one for the children.
I think there's a political purpose here. Principals are not running a school but a military center. Students are facing an atmosphere of harassment and political persecution that we are not going to accept. As a counselor, I won't accept it. Neither will parents or guardians.
Through years of mobilizations, students could give the Chilean people back their universal right to education.
Jamaica's Prime Minister Andrew Holmes says the government needs to improve the economic and social environment in order to encourage members of the diaspora to return to the country.
For many years, we have relied on the remittances of the diaspora. It helps many households. That's how many children go to school. That's how groceries are bought for the household. But that is not going to be enough for the economic prosperity that we seek. What really needs to happen is for the government to create the economic and social environment so that you feel comfortable to find your way back and feel assured that if you were to make the decision to come back to Jamaica, that you would not be sacrificing a quality of life that you have attained here.
Antigua and Barbuda is set to host an international concert on June 1st to boost awareness on plastics pollution. Prime Minister Gaston Brand will be joined by the President of the UN General Assembly, Maria Fernanda Espinosa, for the Played Out concert in Antigua next week. The lineup includes regional and internationally renowned artists and will highlight efforts to tackle the problem globally. Antigua was the first country in the Caribbean to introduce a plastics ban. The lack of control of agricultural and mining activities are making the water resources in Peru disappear. As a result of this, more than 5 million people have no access to drinking water.
The lack of water resources and climate change have raised the alarm for several institutions and experts. Other regions in the Peruvian coast could lose their water resources in the next 10 years.
It's not possible to bring water from other places since that is punished by law. So we have to find ways to use our water resources in a more efficient way.
The lack of water management programs have resulted in the waste of 12,500 million cubic meters of water per year. This is equivalent to 3 times the size of the 10 biggest water reservoirs in the country, according to the National Water Authority. Meanwhile, 5 million people don't have access to drinking water.
There are regions in Peru, especially in the jungle, where the percentage of non-drinking water reaches 70%. In rural areas, this has prompted the increase of gastrointestinal diseases. This occurs because there is no capacity to bring drinking water to the rural areas.
In Peru, those who have access to the public water pay one of the cheapest bills in the region, and those who consume more are the rich families. There is a deficit of $18 million to provide all Peruvian citizens with water.
The state is failing in the management of water, especially when it comes to public contracting. Also, the corruption cases we have seen lately have delayed the change processes in public offices, like the SEDAPAL.
Authorities are responsible for guaranteeing the access to water and the control of mining activities that have caused more than 8,000 environmental liabilities.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome back. The Spanish National Institute of Statistics has said the socio-economic gap in Spain has electoral consequences. In wealthier districts, electoral participation exceeds 80%, while in areas with fewer resources, that figure is 40%. In humbler neighborhoods, there's no trace of electoral campaigns.
Sarai is a resident of the Andalusian neighborhood of La Palmilla, one of the 10 most economically disadvantaged in all of Spain. Social exclusion here exceeds 70%, and locals don't want to hear about politics.
The majority don't vote because politicians don't care about what we think or need and make budget cuts where they shouldn't. They should make cuts to more material things, which benefit people who don't really need it.
Existing on the edge of society, more than 30,000 people in peripheral neighborhoods have been disconnected from politics, and high voter apathy means further exclusion for residents.
The reasons are deep-rooted and are not easy to solve. Most abstain because they are disillusioned. There is a general disenchantment compared with the city, and people feel like they're invisible to the institutions.
Rich districts vote more than poor ones, with turnout of 80% compared with 40% in those with fewer resources. It's a phenomenon that gives political advantages to the wealthiest in society.
People at risk of social exclusion have fewer doors open, and that causes a feeling of helplessness and the idea that their vote will not make a difference. The result is a vicious cycle, and the politicians know that and ignore these areas.
The campaign focused on a war of flags has long passed by those enduring poverty and exclusion in Spain, issues affecting 30% of the population. Inequality in peripheral neighborhoods is not only economic, it's also electoral. In the neighborhood of La Palmilla, only 25% of the electorate voted in the most recent regional elections.
Sergio Rodrigo y André Baló, Telesur, Andalucía, España.
The Deputy Defense Minister in Sri Lanka has admitted that the Easter bombings could have been avoided. The Defense Minister said there was a lapse in intelligence and that the government has to take responsibility. The minister told the parliament that an initial investigation had revealed the Easter bombings had been carried out in revenge for the New Zealand mosque shootings. The Islamophobic response to the bombings has forced hundreds of Pakistani Ahmadi Muslims to flee as anger mounts in the country. The bombings have been blamed on Muslim extremists, and the Islamic State claimed responsibility for the attack. Muslim refugees say they fear for their safety following threats from local people of other faiths. Officials running a refugee detention center east of Tripoli have lamented the lack of essential supplies. A director at one of the centers said they do not have enough food, water, or mattresses to take care of the hundreds of detainees in their custody. He added the International Organization for Migration has not responded to their request for assistance. Thousands of asylum seekers are languishing in detention centers across Libya.
The Tajura Detention Center has around 550 legal migrants, all of whom are from Eritrea, Somalia, South Sudan, and some Arabs from Yemen and Syria. We have not been receiving aid from any of the international organizations, but some local organizations have been providing us with small, insufficient amounts of food.
Algeria's interim president has fired the head of the state oil company Sonatrach. Abdel Moumen Kadour is the latest billionaire to be arrested in the anti-corruption drive against figures close to former President Abdelaziz Bouteflika. 5 billionaires were arrested on Monday as part of the investigation. Last week, the army chief announced that members of the ruling elite will be prosecuted. Pakistan has given the green light for transgender people to be recruited into the police force in Sindh province. The police chief said that it was a time to offer more opportunities to a group often relegated to menial jobs in government. After years of persecution, transgender Pakistanis gained recognition in 2009 when the Supreme Court granted them special status with rights equal to other citizens.
We must start bringing them here and place them according to their qualifications. If anyone is a master's or a graduate, they should come and compete, and they will be given good posts. We will give them space and facilitate them so that they can come into the mainstream.
Over 20 hippos have died in an Ethiopian park. Authorities said the cause of the deaths is toxic algae or an anthrax outbreak. The head of the Gibe Sheleko National Park said that the animals died between April 14th and April 21st. The national park is one of the conservation areas located to southwest of regional capital Hawassa. And with that story, we've come to the end of this news brief. These and other stories, as always, find them on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Estefania Bravo. Thank you for watching.